Christmas must have come early because those watchmaking elves have been busy rustling up some brand new treats to keep our wallets shriveled. It's been a busy few weeks with some incredible watches hitting the shelves. Well, I say incredible because some of the hottest new watches aren't exactly hot button topics for all the right reasons. Stay for the last one and I'll send you a cookie. Rolex's pet project Tudor is on something of a roll this year. First we got the Miss Piggy, a hot pink chronograph treat whose inspiration was a little on the nose. Then a blue dial edition of that same watch with a sunburst so strong it caused all those auroras. And now this, the FXD Pelagos in jet-setting GMT form, built for the aviation arm of the French Navy. Le milieu pistolet, if you will. With the titanium case on a green fabric strap and protected down to 200 meters, it's the perfect partner for a sweaty beach volleyball game with the bros, with the added reassurance of those fixed lugs, so you know the watch won't be going anywhere when you're pounding balls deep in the sand. It's a bit bigger at 42mm across than you might think you'd be comfortable wearing. However, don't let those numbers fool you, because the stumpy lugs and slender 12.7mm thickness make it slip on the wrist with the ease of an experienced vet overseeing a birthing mare. What I'm a little confused by is the caliber, which is not the same from the Black Bay 58 GMT, but the 14.6mm thick Black Bay Pro. How they made it slimmer here, and 0.1mm slimmer than said Black Bay 58 GMT even, I don't know. I can only assume the Black Bay Pro is that thick just for spite. And red-eye flyers haven't been forgotten either, because not only are the hands and markers coated in glowing luminous paint, but so too is the ceramic bezel, in blue for everything related to local time and green for home. At £4,000, it's highway to the duty-free zone. When Atowak aren't busy regretting their naming choices, they're making our imaginative friends at Allwork get a bit hot and sweaty under the collar, because with every iteration of its satellite display creations, Atowak gets closer and closer to cracking it. This time it's with the Cosmofleet, which combines the case of the Allwork UR210 with the mechanism of the UR110, for a watch very likely to be featured soon in a court of IP law. Within the 46.5 by 39mm by 15.7mm thick titanium travel shaver case is an array of 3 satellites that turns reading the time into a round of Space Invaders. At the bottom, picked out in luminous paint either bright teal or intense red, is a minute scale read from left to right, as indicated by whichever satellite traces its orbit closest. From said satellite can be read the hour, with each one capable of displaying one of 4 hours, all arranged to rotate into place ready for the next pass. Think of them like seagulls at the beach, each taking it in turns to swoop down and steal your chips. The mechanism seems incredibly complex, but it's actually relatively straightforward, which is why Atowak have been able to drive it with a simple Japanese Miyota movement. The carriages holding all 3 satellites is geared 3 times quicker, with the outer satellite carriages counter-geared to stay upright. As each passes the apogee, i.e. the furthest point from the minute track, a static protruding tooth flicks the hour along. All that for £2,360 doesn't seem half bad considering the original expectations set by Allwork, and there's even a discount for early bird customers. If you like it, jump in before it boldly goes to court following a strongly worded cease and desist. Fancy British watch brand Fears has taken cues from House of Pain in reviving its collaboration with Christopher Ward for a new set of colours on the Brunswick jump hour. Available in 3 new shades from Farrow and Ball, Raven Black, Coral Lacquer and Mallard Green, the Brunswick jump hour combines 3 things to help white men with what they're otherwise incapable of doing: being on time, looking cool, and jumping. Set within the 41.5mm cushion case atop the Sellita SW200 is Christopher Ward's JJ01 module, which found fame in the bel canto, modified to switch that jump into a chime. With the Brunswick jump hour, it's back to doing what nature intended, switching the hours in a big round aperture at the top from one to the next. Supporting that aperture, the mammary to the teat if you'll allow the comparison, is the minute track with its strong hand patrolling the perimeter. Despite its elegantly formal appearance, the 3,550 pound jump hour is quite capable of taking a trip underwater with 100 meters of water resistance, where, with the Coral edition at least, you'll learn why no other watch brands but Doxa make orange dive watches. On land at least, the Coral pops like a Capri Sun, with the Raven Black more sedate and the Mallard Green a surprisingly delicious hue in person. If Aston Martin made watches, Lance Stroll would wear them badly. If ever you've wished for a city tracking watch straight from the flight deck of the Nostromo, then today is the day to get a lottery ticket, because your dreams have come true with the Alterum Worldtimer. Dispensing with standard hands and markers, the Alterum instead has invested in a system of rings that once did duty as a portal to hell on the event horizon. These days, it's been retired from inflicting horrifying nightmares on unsuspecting scientists, and is quite comfortable providing a timekeeping guide to the world in 4 layers. How does it work? Good question. The innermost disc is your minutes, and then the next disc out is doing double duty as the hours and city indicator. The circle moves around and the stick stays still, with the red stick indicating which city the watch is set to. The next disc has the 24-hour scale with a day-night indicator, and the final disc is of course the city disc, adjustable via the second crown at 2 o'clock. The 38.5 by 10.5mm thick stainless steel case, matched with a blocky bracelet with each link engraved with 7 lines, takes a lesson in harsh brutality from my Sunday school teacher. This is a watch for an industrial future where the McSoylent meal is served in schools and the main currency is fighting. Despite that, it wears well on an average size wrist, thanks to minimal space taken up by the Sellita SW330-2 GMT, an automatic caliber with 56 hours of power reserve. There's just 100 pieces, each priced at £3,315. When astronaut Walter Schirra ascended to space in 1962, little did he know what kind of history he was making in those moments. Not the space stuff, don't be silly. Any old tech billionaire can do that. I'm talking about the birth of the biggest bovine bank in the Omega stable, the first Omega in space. Originally a reference CK2998, the first Omega worn in space was picked out by Schirra himself and enjoyed many of the classic pre-pro details so sought after by collectors, such as the alpha hands, original logo and symmetrical crown guardless case. That's all been brought back today with the addition of a deep blue sunburst dial, which reminds me of the water my good friend Vinny accidentally fell into that night whilst holding a concrete block with his feet. Silly Vinny. Unlike the Ed White, this gets the more affordable and almost equally attractive caliber 3861, a movement I consider the best bang for the buck in the entire industry. Seeing all the components do their thing unobstructed by a rotorweight is pure mechanical bareback, yet it's not the most exciting thing the FOIS, as it's known, is bringing to the table. For many years, Omega has forced customers to make the most difficult decision. No, not choosing between the kids' tuition and a shiny new watch, that's easy, but Hesalite or Sapphire. The standard Moonwatch Pro either gets a Hesalite crystal and solid caseback, or a Sapphire crystal and caseback, with the Sapphire bordered with the most off-putting milky ring since that albino orgy. The £7,400 FOIS holds the key to harmony, a sapphire crystal that looks just like Hesalite. No prominent corner, no milky ring, just smooth, curvy, clear goodness. Do you think Omega will do the right thing and fit it to the Sapphire Pro? Grand Seiko's been watching David Attenborough again because it's back at it with the au naturel aesthetic, this time inspired by the impossibly crisp turquoise waters of the Atera Valley. Nestled between the mountainous peaks of the Kiso district, the Atera Valley once again demonstrates that God started with Japan and got bored when he did everything else. The deep flowing lines of the Grand Seiko SLGA025 Atera Valley evokes the heart-stopping chill of a campsite shower, whilst the randomized brush texture puts me in mind of the back of my first iPhone. What doesn't really come across on screen is the depth of the dial's colour, which changes in the light like a crack-addicted chameleon. Case and movement-wise, we're borrowing from the titanium Lake Sewer, complete with its unconventional spring drive 9R-A2 caliber, one of Grand Seiko's best. If you can tear your eyes off the dial for a second, you'll be treated to a somber but immaculately finished movement that'll keep on ticking for a solid 5 days before needing assistance. Of course, the frosted and beveled rotor weight will do that job for you double quick when the cold dial makes you involuntarily shiver. Something else that'll make you quake in your boots, however, is the price. £9,600. Yes, the days of bargain Grand Seikos appear to be well behind us. The era of the snowflake has long thawed out, and we're paying the price for its icy visage to flow into the Atera's clear waters. Like the planet, it'll be worth a whole chunk less used. It's not often a high-end watchmaker seeks to bring value to its complications, and although the 19,900 Swiss franc price of H. Moser's latest edition could hardly be called cheap, this interesting little complication does a whole lot more than you'd expect. Nestled at the bottom of the dial of this blue Fume Pioneer is a sub-seconds dial, but one you're perhaps unfamiliar with. Instead of looping around once per minute, it travels the entire distance in 30 seconds, snapping back to the start of the arc once the end has been reached. It's a 30-second retrograde complication, and whilst it's not the first, Blancpain for one have featured it before, the way it's been put to use is undeniably original. Where the second hand would usually sit in a subdial is a twin-lobe cam, which drives a sprung lever connected to the hand via a rack the full distance of the indicator. Once the lever's finger reaches the sudden end of the first lobe, it drops, sending it and the hand back to the beginning. Supporting the whole ensemble is the Moser moustache, offering an unobstructed view of this nifty little widget. How can you tell if the current 30 seconds is the first or second of the minute? The disc on which the cam sits is split into two blues, light and dark, which you're welcome to assign whichever way you like. The complication, designed by retrograde experts Agenhor, sits astride Moser's semi-skeletonized caliber HMC 201, a potent combination that makes deciding which side to look at surprisingly difficult. When Chinese watchmaking comes to mind, we think of rolling waves, fine sand, a warm breeze, and the friendliest guy you've never met trying to unload a watch with the lifespan of the average mayfly. This makes Chinese watchmaker Neo Kung very sad, so he decided to take it upon himself to do something about it. A limited edition of 12 pieces isn't going to make much of a dent in the reputation of Chinese watchmaking, but the Orienta chronograph is a hell of a start. The simple bicompact design in the style of China's famous seagull chronograph is wrought with the excellence of the best watchmaking on earth, trimmed with red and gold details inspired by the nation's favourite Disney character. Why pay homage to the seagull? Neo Kung himself worked there as chief product officer, honing his skills to go at it alone and create something truly exceptional. And if you're still waiting for the truly exceptional part, here it is. The Venus 175 modified to a level that would make even Vacheron Constantin do a double take. Here's where it gets interesting, by which I mean interesting for me and probably deadly boring for you. Venus was a Swiss chronograph manufacturer that was purchased by Seagull in the 1960s and served as the basis for the Seagull hand-wound chronograph we all know and love today. But that caliber is available for €600 or so, and the Orienta is asking €35,800, so what gives? Painstaking hand finishing, that's what. Every part and every surface is redressed to perfection, leaving a shine and sparkle Neo Kung can be proud of. So much so he set it in 39.8mm of solid platinum, a specification you're unlikely to find on AliExpress. If up-and-coming watchmaker Felipe Pikullik's superpower is handmade watchmaking, his kryptonite is electricity, steering him down a once well-trodden but now mostly abandoned path of making watches with manually operated tools. The Moonphase 1, complete with three-dimensional Moonphase and now with the addition of a crocodile's least favourite material, Meteorite, too soon? Is built on top of a Unitas 6497. But don't let that put you off, because it's being touched up more than the entire choir. Little remains of the original, with an excruciating amount of hand finishing applied to every nook and cranny. The bridges are skeletonized with a handsaw, the bevels cut and shaped with blades and files, and polished with wood and paste. To call it a labour of love makes James Cameron's Titanic look like a first-date pedal boat tour of Clapham Pond. This is blood, sweat, tears, and perhaps just a little bit of gentleman's relish. With bevels thicker than Steven Seagal's hairline and inward angles crisper than selective DNA modification, there are many, many worse ways to spend £27,000. The details available to explore here are so rich and numerous they'd have Poirot needing a little sit down. The apertures on the dial, for example, for the handmade moon and the mechanism that drives it, are hand-beveled and polished. The hands themselves, they're shaped from raw stock by hand and hand-treated into the bluey-purple hands you see here. By hand! Unexpected hands appear more often in the Moonphase 1 than that uncle we don't talk about anymore. If you're thinking of comparing it to a Patek Philippe or something similar, don't. The level of hand finishing in the Felipe Pikullik makes Pateks look like they were built by AI. Speaking of Patek Philippe's built by AI, perhaps the release to generate the most conversation, and not all for the right reasons, is the Patek Philippe Cubitus, a watch that's widely considered to be what would happen if the Nautilus were captured by the Borg. With all else the same, taking the bracelet dial and flappy wings of the Nautilus, the Cubitus devolves the case of the Nautilus from that famous rounded square shape into a low poly-clipped cube that's been badged by some as uglier than a boar with Botox. Aside from some pointed statements from brand CEO Thierry Stern about the watch's design origins and intended audience, it's the first watch in a long time from the hallowed brand to be considered a bigger miss than the Santa Maria. At 45mm across and starting at over £35,000, it's not just a big pill to swallow, it's the defibrillator, gurney and ambulance too. I wouldn't ordinarily offer an opinion on a watch this early in its life cycle without becoming diddy levels of familiar with it, but this feels like an exceptional case. Here it is. It's fine. I don't love it, I don't hate it. I'd wear it, but I wouldn't reach for it. I am acutely aware of how familiar the conversation around it is, in many ways matching almost word for word the opinion on the Nautilus, and especially the Aquanaut, just 10 or so years ago. I expect the Cubitus will be a reasonable commercial success, and especially since Stern has announced it will take over some of the production numbers of the Nautilus and Aquanaut, further reducing availability of those models. It'll probably turn out to be the right business move, but is it the one to light a fire under the butts of increasingly jaded collectors? I don't think so. That's what the Felipe Pikullik is for. And remember, if you still want to buy a Nautilus or Aquanaut, it's probably cheaper just to buy one pre-owned and pay the extra. It'll certainly be less costly than buying all the other watches you don't want to. See you next time.